crash that killed one champion in the election of this poor boy from rural Alabama, who spent more than half of his congressional career introducing the museum bill, only to have it end in a bipartisan effort, inspired by men and women of faith. It reminds me of the words of one of my favorite poets, Langston Hughes, which seems so fitting and appropriate here. The name of the poem is Harlem, and in it he says, "What happened to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Maybe it just sag like a heavy load, or does it explode?" Today, we must thank the White House and the United States Congress, my former colleague, Governor Sam Brownback, Senator Max Cleland, and Congressman J.C. Watts, the Smithsonian Board of Regents, the Secretary of the Smithsonian Institution, Wayne Clough, the Director of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, Lonnie Bunch, and his entire staff. The Distinguished Advisor Council of Celebrity and Scholars, and the general corporate and individual donors who have taken a dream deferred and helped it find its place in history. This is an end, but it is also a beginning. There's still much work to do, and as we pursue this worthy goal, sent us down through the ages, we must not shrink. We must call upon the courage of those who were in the struggle long before any of us were born. We must tell the story, the whole story, 400-year story of African American contribution to this nation's history from slavery to the present, without anger or apology. The problem we face today as a nation, make it plain, make it clear that there's still a great deal of pain that needs to be healed. The story told in this building can speak the truth that has the power to set an entire nation free and reveal the boldest lesson of liberty, justice, and the true democracy to us all. I look forward, Lonnie Bunch, I look forward to the day when I can amble through the exhibits, search through the archives, participate in the program, rest my tired feet in the cafe, and get lost in history inside the granite wall of an idea whose time has finally come. We didn't give up. We didn't give in. We didn't give out. We didn't get lost in a sea of despair. We kept the faith. We kept our eyes on the prize. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Lewis. Inspiring. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you another renowned and important supporter of the new museum. Governor Sam Brownback served 14 years in the United States Senate prior to becoming the governor of the state of Kansas in 2011. His commitment to this museum is based on his deep commitment to human rights. While in the Senate, he called on the United States to condemn the genocide in Sudan's Darfur region, and he consistently introduced legislation to ban human trafficking around the world. Governor Brownback sponsored the legislation in the Senate to establish this museum. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Governor Sam Brownback.
What a great honor to be here with you, Mr. President, Mr. Obama, my former colleague, John Lewis, other colleagues that are here. This is a momentous occasion, and I'm delighted to be a part of it. In Kansas, we have a deep sense, really, of our state's history and destiny. We're one of the few states in the Union that was formed for a cause, and our cause was to end the barbaric practice of slavery. John Brown was one of our most famous residents. The president was also a resident of Kansas at one time. John Brown's legacy is a mix of righteousness, violence, and zealotry. But his cause was the undoing of the enormous crime of slavery. Before he was executed for treason, he spoke these haunting and prescient words. I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away but by blood. A great deal of blood was shed in the years that followed, even after the Civil War. The nation had a long way to go before we could realize the goals laid forth in our founding documents. Blatant bigotry, casual disrespect, and an ever-present disregard for the dignity of African Americans was the rule and not the exception in our land. This even after legal segregation was ended, even after Dr. King marched on Washington, even after Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat, even after those 3 shots rang out in Memphis and another American poet and prophet was called home to be with the Lord. The African American people have experienced the worst of our shortcomings as a nation. The shortcomings of justice, of compassion, of humanity. This museum will allow the culture and the identity of the African American people to be celebrated as one that shed these unconscionable circumstances, met its unparalleled challenges, and rose to an unimaginable achievement. The groundbreaking of this museum could not be more timely. Now, some could cynically see it as an attempt to gloss over the sins of the past, or as an attempt to pay back the injustices. It is neither of those things. It is instead a celebration of a uniquely American triumph of will. To consider this museum an airing of grievances is to sell it dramatically short. It is, in fact, a presentation of the triumph of the African American people. This museum cannot be for Caucasian grandchildren just to see how awful the crimes of their ancestors were, or for the African American grandchildren to see how terrible their ancestors were treated. This museum is for the American grandchildren to see the triumph of great Americans. In 1957, Dr. King wrote these words, "But the end is reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of the beloved community." We are one step closer to that vision today. God bless you all, and thank you for being here.
Learning American history through listening to music could be considered by some a shortcut. That is, unless, of course, the teacher is the opera star Thomas Hampson. Then it's more than just learning, it's being transported. This celebrated baritone from Washington State is revered for his interpretation of Mahler and Verdi, but he has long been an advocate of American song. Today, he graces this celebration with works by 2 iconic American composers, Grief by William Grant Still, and Simple Gifts by Aaron Copland.
on pinions trailing, and head bowed low in your hands. Morning angel with heartstrings wailing for one who in death's hall stands. Morning angel, silence your wailing and raise your head from your hands. Weeping angel, on your pinions trailing, the white dove promise stands. Weeping angel, on pinions trailing, and head bowed low in your hands. Morning angel, with heartstrings wailing for one who in death's hall stands. Morning angel, silence your wailing and raise your head from your hands. Weeping angel, on your pinions trailing, the white dove promise stands. Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where you ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed to turn. Turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning we come round right. 'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where you ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight.
Ladies and gentlemen, returning to you now, founding museum director Lonnie Bunch.
You know, as I mentioned earlier, this museum is indebted to a wonderful array of donors and supporters. But today, I want to acknowledge our youngest donors. One of my former students, Tracy Minna, worked with children at the Stuyvesant Montessori School as they celebrated the history of African Americans. When they learned of the museum, they started an effort entitled Make a Change with Change. So last year, these students collected $600 in coins and presented it to the museum. Today,